Welcome to Last Week in Localization, the show where we talk about the latest from the area of research, events, and news from the world of localization. My name is Sarah Hickey. I am the VP of Research at Nimdzi Insights. And in case you have never heard of Nimdzi, we are a market research and consulting company with special focus on the language industry and everything that has to do with language services, language technology. You might be a linguist. We have things for you as well. You might be someone who's interested in buying language services, and we offer consulting and research to all people like that, or people who just want to learn more about the language industry. And today here I have my wonderful colleague, Gabriel, with me.
Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be here again with you, Sarah. We're making a habit out of this, right?
Yes, exactly.
Tracking what you do, popping up on all the social media. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely, yeah. The last one was so successful. I just had to have you back, you know.
There you go.
Since it's called Last Week in Localization, we actually did something together last week that we want to talk about today. We hosted a webinar for the Finnish Association Sky. And we did a presentation where we kind of combined two sides of the coin. On the one hand, the language service providers, and then the buyers of language services. So we talk about the language service providers a lot, or I do anyway, because I do the Nimdzi 100, where we look at the whole LSP landscape. We talk about the trends. We already had a webinar there. And if you haven't seen the webinar or if you haven't read the report, you can find both on our website. So today, maybe we can focus a little bit more on the buyer side and how they fit into this whole equation.
Yeah, absolutely. There's such a ton of information, really, and perspectives. At the same time, it almost feels like people want to know what buyers think, buyers of language services, but not enough attention is given to them, and not enough people are talking about it. So we have this thing at Nimdzi, this running series that we've been doing for well over a year now, called Lessons in Localization, where we invite localization managers, translation managers, or people who have to do with language services in these different companies to walk us through their successes, their pain points and challenges, and their initiatives. And so we're kind of reaching critical mass here, where we see trends appearing a little bit when talking to them. So yeah, it's about time to start talking about, okay, what do buyers want? What do they teach us?
Exactly, because in the end, right, for most language service providers, the buyers, well, they're their clients, and we always keep talking about how our markets, or any market, is client-driven, or more specifically, even end-user-driven. But maybe from the perspective of the providers, first of all, it's always the buyers, right? So it's time to shine a light on them as well. And we did this last week with tying this very close together. We can maybe take a look at some of the slides we used there. So one of the bigger trends, yeah, this one from the Nimdzi 100, was a fairly bold statement where we said that the LSP is dead. Well, I want to briefly explain this, so just that we kind of set the stage for what this has to do, or how this ties in with the buyers afterwards. And it's a fairly bold statement. And it's only partially true, really only for the biggest companies in the industry. For the smaller ones that make up about 80% of the market, it might not be as true, but just to say that up front. But anyway, there's a trend that is not new, but stronger than ever. And that is that LSPs are kind of moving away from this more transactional work and towards more the master service-based business. Sorry. At the same time, then the needs of the buyers, and here is where the buyers already come into play, they have become more complex, right? So that over time, LSPs have started to not just focus on language services, but they have added what we call adjacent services. So, maybe digital packaging or cloud recording in the media industry, content management, content creation, copywriting. And there's a long list, but just to give you an idea that it's no longer just about language services, and that this way the former traditional LSPs are becoming more like corporate service providers, or we actually started calling them strategic partners for global business. And what we noticed is that in the transition to achieving this goal, technology is the biggest ally for LSPs. Especially now during the pandemic, we saw that the LSPs who had a good tech stack set up, they were not just only able to survive the pandemic, but they were able to grow their business because they were able to respond to their clients' needs for when it came to scalability, productivity, limited budgets. They used technology to solve those challenges. And of course, then there is still the other side. A lot of the business in our industry is also still the smaller transactional types of work. And of course, the larger LSPs are also not leaving this by the wayside. But instead of doing this very manually, they are more investing now in developing AI-enhanced language portals and automating workflows for this type of work. So just to sum it up, basically, the acronym is no longer accurate because there's more to an LSP these days than just language services. And it's all being facilitated by technology as well. And now this is just to give the background here. Now, Gabe, you can tell us what this has to do with buyers, how we tie it in with the buyers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no two ways about it. Technology is so central to the way we do things in this industry, isn't it? I like what you mentioned there about, and the comment I'm making frequently. It's oftentimes a two-way kind of highway where on the one hand you have the buyers of language services, and on the other hand you have the end users, so individuals like you and me, right? And what I like to think and say is that while it's us as end consumers who drive the demand, it's the buyers who really shape it. It's because they have the products. It's because of that we are buying them. And tech is central here. And you touched on the element of complexity and systems becoming more complex. And a lot of these global brands, they have technology-centric products, and technology implies that those who enter the equation, like LSPs, they need to adapt to it, right? So it's really the buyers who drive the technology discussion, like by virtue of them having this vast tech stack. And an example I like to use a lot is machine translation. So at this point, and we've done our research, MT is the second most widespread service among the LSPs. Like we have something like, the point is 73% of LSPs globally offer services related to MT. But the paradox, or something that maybe you do not realize, is that this is because their buyers, their clients, are pushing them towards to this. MT is not the service that is a big revenue generator for LSPs. So it's really the buyers who are looking at it from a cost efficiency perspective, but mainly from a turnaround time and kind of speed to market perspective. They are the ones who drive the discussion. So that is the first bullet point that people can see on the slide here. At the same time, so another element that we found is, and again, I'm basing this off on the qualitative interviews that we've been running for well over a year and beyond that, is that technology has a shelf life, right? So we're in this fast environment where it's moving at a blistering pace. And technology updating and developing and refreshing also implies that companies just need to, every few years, they need to update it. And it seems right now, and that's the eye test and the empirical data that we have shows that we're right at that point where a lot of buyers, and talking about buyers here, a lot of buyers have already changed their tech stack, so updated their MT solutions, their TMSs, or they are right in the middle of doing that because they want to respond to these new trends everyone is talking about, like AI, how to leverage AI in their operations, or having MT as well. So it seems like every few years, 5 to 6 years, or maybe even on shorter time frames, there's this update, and it's very cyclical. So for LSPs, what this means is they need to adapt, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And this ties in exactly with what we say about many things in the industry. Again, is that in the end, the services that we provide need to be tailored to our clients. This is of course no news in any kind of service business. It's about pleasing the client in some way, of course, right? Or you're providing a service, and it should be easy to use. It should be tailored to the client's needs. So I don't think it's new, but it seems to be becoming a stronger and stronger trend going forward. And like we said, the needs of the buyers are also becoming more complex. So this poses a challenge then to the LSPs, and in hindsight, like on the other hand, of how to respond to this and be relevant and effortless, right? Effortless is one of the key words that we keep hearing these days all the time. Everyone wants to be effortless.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, when I think about it, it's quite admirable that by and large, our data shows that LSPs are doing things right. In terms of responsiveness, in terms of adapting to the demands that is coming from their clients. Um, I do feel, and blanket statement for LSPs, we're in an adaptive and responsive industry. So it's all about finding these ways how you can better service your clients and how you can integrate with them. And there's a lot of added value in that LSPs have been able to demonstrate. And I guess, like as you were saying, it comes down to just making it easy for people. And that's probably regardless of the industry. But even if you think about consumer to buyer to brands interactions, brands just want to make it easy for people. And I feel LSPs are no different in the sense that, like, there's this whole huge operation of translating millions of words and in a zillion of languages. You just want to make it easy for your clients, and hence the word effortless that we've been hearing a lot in the recent past.
Right, exactly, because that's really where LSPs add value by making it as easy as possible. Leave the complexity. The buyer should be able to just leave the complexity to the LSP and have like more or less nothing to do with it. It's like, I want this, and this needs to be easy for me. And the LSP goes like, yeah, we got you. And if it's complex for them on their end, that's their problem. But for the buyer, it should be simple.
Yeah.
And oh, sorry. We have another slide where you actually summarized some of the main lessons that we learned from our lessons in localization. I feel like that's a good point to talk about some of that as well.
Yeah, there isn't really a way to escape. If we're talking about micro, we need to talk about the macro trends, like what it is that is affecting the buyers, and the difficulty of summarizing all of this research that we've done and the different lessons of localization is because there are so many companies, and each company has a different situation, a different environment. Different industries have different challenges, which makes it all the more difficult for LSPs to adapt and to stay abreast of what is happening. And again, to their credits, they've been doing that very well. So the few elements that our viewers and listeners can see here is, we're maybe just mentioning the obvious things, right? Like with the pandemic, and even before that, there's this whole push towards online and mobile, really, with a lot of users. The access to internet is being democratized across the globe. In some pockets of the world, like Africa, having a mobile phone is even cheaper than having internet. So, connectivity is becoming a thing, and what this means is really there's more users now than there ever was, and it's on an upward trend. So, with a lot of these regions, that there's literally hundreds of millions of people that are projected to join the the online business ecosystem, let's say, in the next 2 or 3 years. If you think about countries like India, but also in Africa.
Yeah, and that holds opportunities for so many different pockets and different verticals of our language industry, right? On the one hand, we've already this is something we talk about in the NIMSY 100, is that we've seen this massive boom in e-commerce, and it was like 10 years worth of growth in 3 months in the US, and it just surpassed all expectations. Everything, it was just growth the whole time because of the lockdowns. But also, I do feel like there will be a lasting impact on people having experienced this amount of online transactions now, or some brick and mortar stores that opened their online presence for the first time. They're not going to take it down after the pandemic. And, also that e-commerce really is just a way of selling. And so it can apply to any industry. And that holds so many opportunities. Then we've talked about gaming and how mobile gaming is becoming ever more popular as well. And streaming as well. Once 5G is implemented, we can expect that this will unlock a whole new category of users once it'll be easy to stream something on your phone. So there's so much coming, and already so much is happening, and there's so much more to come as well in that area.
Yeah, absolutely. Like there's really no way back at this point, right? It's just going to continue at an accelerated pace. If you think about it, like the widespreading access to internet, more people being able to afford devices of any kind to access it, to interact with the brands, like there's this word of accessibility, right? And I think language and the access to technology goes hand in hand, because language plays a key role in accessibility. Like we have the data to prove it, really. But at the same time, one of the elements that makes this an extremely competitive landscape is, you have millions of users engaging with brands, but you have also thousands and thousands of brands doing the same thing. Yes. So it's extremely important to stand out in such a crowded market. How do you do that, right, as a brand? And there's this whole, and what we're seeing from our data, from our interviews, is that it's about appealing to people's sensibilities. The same way LSPs tailor to their clients, well, clients want to address their own users in those regions, those different countries they are at.
Yeah, and so I feel like you're hinting at hyper-localization here. Given that we did the presentation together last week, I feel like we're heading in that direction. And I know we have some examples of that here. So maybe you can explain what hyper-localization is, and we can take a look at an example that's on the next slide.
Yeah, absolutely. The term of hyperlocalization, and this is not a textbook definition, right? But if you think about the concept of localization, which is adapting a product, a service to a country market, to the language and culture of that market, you push it to the nth degree, really, with hyperlocalization. So you do it extra, right? So you expand your playing field to include all manner of influences in the way you go about things. And this is an example that we'd be using. Some of you may be familiar with the brand Farfetch. Very, very nice people to talk to. And it's an e-commerce platform, and they sell and market luxury brands, so fashion, apparel, and so on. And one of the examples, what they do is they really tailor the content as a company. They tailor the content and the branding towards the concrete countries and regions. So the example we're seeing right here is on their page for the Arabic-speaking regions where they are present. During Ramadan, they have a section of the website that offers a selection of items that may be relevant or pertinent to users in that country during that period of year. So when we're talking about hyperlocalization, we're really talking about brands being more and more mindful of elements such as religion and
Hmm.
making sensible and sensitive use of that.
Yeah.
And incorporating that into the way they address people. But it's not just religion, it's also the use of colors, or something that is very topical these days. It's sustainability, and maybe you as a German, you have opinions on that, right?
Of course I do. Yeah, it's true. Like, and we did a study looking into the behaviors of German consumers as well, and I can relate to a lot of it. Yeah, and that sustainability is appealing to Germans is just it's so true. And in my opinion, as a German, a good thing. But yeah, it's definitely a selling point here as well. Germans will pay more or choose your brand if you can, if it's eco-friendly, made from sustainable materials, has other good use cases. Because I guess these days we're all trying to be better, trying to solve some of the world's problems, and then you can feel good by contributing to a good cause. If you're, if I stand in front of like a shelf at the supermarket of different types of chocolate, and I get to choose one that supports all sorts of projects and is sustainable versus one that is just a run-of-the-mill wrapped in plastic one, then I will go for the sustainable one and pay a few cents more. That is true. Yeah.
Absolutely, and there's from country to country, from user to user, there we have different sensibilities, right? And this is really it, like going beyond like the traditional elements of language, when you cannot just think about pure translation, but it touches on so many areas of our lives, doesn't it? Hence the word hyperlocalization. You're just continually pushing that to the nth degree. Let's just call a spade a spade. This is made with an objective in mind, right? So, which very likely is to sell a product or a service. But it's definitely something we're seeing. What this also means is, and this is a segue to the other example we have. This just means more content, doesn't it?
Of course.
And you mentioned it with 5G as well.
Yeah, and that's the thing with all of the stuff we're talking about, all these trends, and this is a wonderful thing about the language industry, because in so many ways there's always work for us because there's always more content, right? Our kind of mantra of when times are good, we translate contracts, and when times are bad, we can't translate lawsuits. In this case, there's more content. Well, it just means one thing, there's more need for translation and localization. So yeah, if we hear there's more going on in e-commerce, well, that means there's more happening, more content online. And as soon as a brand wants to reach other markets or users from other markets, then they need to have website localization. So this always translates into growth and opportunities for our market in the end.
Absolutely, and brands are looking at ways. It's not just about how you execute the work, how you make it happen, right? Like by including all of these references or being mindful of your consumers and of their sensibilities, but it's also about finding new channels. And again, going back to the comments about this being a crowded market, it's about finding these channels where you can reach people and cue social media, right? And the big importance they have. Last year, we did some coverage on TikTok, and very clearly diving deeper into what is happening there. The takeaway was for us the adolescents, let's say, or the younger generations using TikTok today are the buyers of tomorrow.
Absolutely.
So in 2 years, 3 years time, they will have money to spend, and so these brands are working upstream, right? Like they want to form connections with them. So things like digital marketing influencers and these areas, like brands doing more and more in this sense is what is happening as well. And we have that example on one of the slides there, right? Where with AliExpress, the Chinese e-commerce giants. For example, we've talked to them last year, and what they're doing is very interesting in that they are, and this doesn't even necessarily have to do anything with localization, but they're at first glance, at least, they are working with in-country producers of content, so bloggers, Instagram influencers, who they invite to podcasts or or they record videos with them. So they have a global platform where they interact with content creators, but also the producers, so the video studios, the recording studios that create that content. And this is another way brands are reaching out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like you said, it's a really clever approach, that first of all, it's already relevant today, but it will become ever more relevant. It's also like a future-proofing type of approach because, of course, like you said, they are the buyers of tomorrow, right? This generation. So I don't know if we can see that slide as well, or it's not the next one about AliExpress. Yes. Can you explain that a little bit, what we're seeing there?
Yeah, so what people are seeing here are the examples from the AliExpress platform where I cannot see the language there, but that's an example of a video that was created with an influencer talking about a specific product. Mm-hmm. So brands are looking to tap into these sort of cultural movements as well, like who are the influencers? That's a big thing, has been for a few years now. But also, and I think there's the element here of humanizing interactions. We're talking about the humanizing the interactions between the buyers and the customers, in that there's elements of social responsibility as well, or sustainability, and brands need to answer to the sentiment, or to the sentiment that is around these issues that people hold dear, depending on the country and so on. So, and the next example we have is a very good example of how brands do that as well. And this is from Skyscanner. There's this element of responsiveness and building a connection with your users. So what we're showing here is the Spanish version of an interactive map Skyscanner created last year when COVID started being widespread, really, where travelers could check out, okay, what are the different restrictions based on the country that they were traveling to, so that they can plan ahead and see what they need to do in order to travel. So it's, and I find there's a lot of similarities between the LSP to client interaction and the client to consumer interaction in this case, isn't there? In how buyers are adapting to the trends, being responsive, trying to appeal to their audience, and then the LSPs follow suit. So based on how the clients shape the demand, the LSPs just need to follow suit.
Yeah, and this brings us back around to what you were talking about with looking at the trends from the areas or the industries that the buyers work in, because really those are the ones that drive the overall demand and the whole story, because that will drive what the buyers do and what they need, and that ultimately affects, again, what the LSPs will need to do to please the buyer. So there's this whole chain. And I like what you said earlier about humanizing that kind of an element, because in the end, we know this, and studies have shown that if you form an emotional connection to something, it's always stronger, right? And especially when it comes to this world of abundance that we live in, right? We at this stage, we have everything in abundance in terms of, so many things to choose from, If I want to buy a shoe, there's so many brands, If I want to buy, a chocolate bar, I'm a bit of a chocoholic. There's so many brands to choose from. So how do you stand out, and forming an emotional connection in one way or another, and humanizing, finding that human element that will always set you ahead. It forms just that stronger bond as well.
Absolutely, no debates. At the same time, a slight caveat to what you were saying when I was listening, and I thought about, well, for us in the Western world, maybe that's the case, right? Like, we have access to practically anything we want, but the rest of the world, or large parts of the world, are on their way to this point, and you want to enable access to them.
Yeah, absolutely. But even there, I mean, pretty much as soon as you have access to the internet now, it's true you can't necessarily order everything you want from any place in the world, of course. But as far as access to information goes these days and access to online content goes, that is becoming more democratized as soon as you have access to the internet now. So even there, then there is abundance of information then as well. Yeah, so not in every language, that's another topic to talk about, but in general there's just so much, and you want to stand out is the point. And I really like what Skyscanner did as well, that example that you shared there, because as we all know, with the pandemic, it was a very tough time for travel. I want to say agencies, but I don't know if that's the right word, travel companies in this case. And I like that they connected to their users, through their end users this way by, okay, maybe you can't travel right now or you want to travel, but that they provide this extra service to them of updating this map with the travel restrictions and making it fit to, every user's country of origin as well. So because that must have been a lot of effort, because it was constantly changing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's commendable as far as efforts. You could almost say it's a drop in the ocean, but it's illustrative of how, and this is something that we mention to LSPs a lot, is you want to relate to the situation of your clients. You need to stay on top of what it is that is happening to you. And one of the, I mean, I guess there's no way, we were going to avoid the whole COVID topic, right? Weren't we, Sarah?
We tried, but
we give it our best to try. But if you think about it, like the way companies have been responding, it's about communication. It's about finding how you can relate to the challenges and troubles of your peer, let's say, almost, because in the end we're all peers. You can make that argument.
Definitely.
So,
And
yeah.
sorry to interrupt you there, but also when I was looking into the effect on of the pandemic on LSPs at the very beginning of the pandemic, remember as well, the first step for everyone I talked to anyway, was to help their clients move online. So step number one was every LSP made sure that their own staff were able to work remotely. But the immediate step afterwards was to make sure that their clients could work online as well, because, or that even they help their clients move online again, because it's a chain as well, right? It's great if you can work virtually, but if your client can't, then, well, there goes that business. And also there were opportunities within that, of course. Some people didn't have a website presence yet, or not localized anyway. Well, now was the time, so you had to be ready as well and provide that extra level of customer service. But it was in the end also not just a way to stand out with great customer service, but there were opportunities that were lying within that as well, for basically everyone helping everyone to go online.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There are examples around that, like with everyone was responding to the new reality. There were notices going out, extra communication,
extra training as well.
Exactly. So all of that needed language support from the LSPs, and the industry has generally responded very well to that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the benchmarks are really high as far as our industry, but that also goes to show how deeply ingrained or integrated the language industry is in the global, like, let's say, economy, right? Like we're right in the thick of it, aren't we?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's the thing, we touch upon every layer of every industry, really. There's opportunity, because wherever there's humans, wherever we're communicating, wherever there's business deals need to be made, and or customers need to be reached. Some form of either verbal or written communication is basically in everything. And as globalization continues, well, then there's your need for translation and localization services.
Yeah, there's no way we're going to turn back the clock, right? So really, like, we're talking a lot about macro trends here, aren't we? But a lot of the discussions and the presentations we're doing and the work we're doing at Nimdzi is about exposing people to these realities of their individual markets, like what is happening on a global scale, but also in in their particular industries, because that really is what conditions how companies, how buyers conceive of language and how they think, or what part it has to play in their operations.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, when it comes to trends and it's really time to flip the script here, right? Like COVID is behind us, we're getting out of it. What do you think are the next things people should focus on in these interactions?
Yeah, exactly. That's it. It's time to stop talking about COVID and how we're reacting to COVID, because we've been reacting to COVID for like, more than a year now. We're already like way in the thick of it, hopefully sort of coming out of it. So it's actually beyond time to start thinking about what you can do afterwards, what your strategy is coming out of COVID, what you will take with you. I think on the LSP side, I'm really happy that I've seen so much innovation going around as well, and people using the time to maybe reshuffle the internal resources. Like maybe there was not as much demand in one field, but you were able to train people to go into another field, or just restructure. So it's more efficient now. Or people finally got their web presence in like sorted, or finally launched their remote interpreting tool or something like that. So, or a lot of people also told me that they suddenly had to offer different services that they never used before, because again, the clients needed it, and now they were able to provide it. And I mean, this is not going to go away again. Or that they've started diversifying their client portfolio because they realized, well, we can't have, I don't know, just making up a number, 70% of our revenue come from the travel industry, because that didn't work out so well. We need to have a more diverse client portfolio. And so ultimately this should like really send our industry as a whole a step forward, when all these projects that have been put on the long finger for so long suddenly came to the forefront. It accelerated some of that innovation, and just I don't even know what to call it, like streamlining made it more efficient. I don't know. I'm really lacking the words at this stage, but I'm very excited. I think we're coming out very strong, and with new services, new verticals, new technologies as well. And hopefully a better relationship with our clients as well, because times like these, they also bring people together. I think we have one more slide actually, where you can talk a little bit more about the buyer side again, right? What they should
absolutely.
remember, what we should remember, the LSPs in terms of
Absolutely.
buyers.
What anyone should remember, I think this applies across the board, right? Like whether for an LSP or an individual linguist or a buyer of language services, we touch on a lot of different things, like technology on one hand, right? And this is fundamentally a tech-driven world. If the recent 18 months have taught us anything, it's that don't put off your projects to develop something new, innovate. And I mean, there's still time for it. Like it's not, there is a timer to it, but you should continuously think about improving the way you work, look for optimizations, but also for ways you can integrate with your clients. So connecting the dots there, and how and connecting with your client systems. So this is, we live in a tech-driven world, right? That's the bullet point we have there. Another element, and as we talked about, more potential buyers of products and services being out there than ever. In a lot of industries, and COVID has been an example, you need to be responsive. I mean, we talked a lot about e-commerce, or travel, but then you have industries such as healthcare or life sciences, where it's really a matter of life and death, how responsive and how fast you can get content out. So the keyword of time to market is becoming extremely critical and important for language industry professionals, and really using the blanket term here because that applies to linguists, but also to LSPs. That is a crucial part of how we react to what is going on in the world. And yeah, then there's the element of content we talked about.
Yeah, that we talked about a lot already. More
Yeah.
content will need more solutions, it says there on your slide. And yeah, that's just true. We have already said there will be an explosion of content coming our way. It has already begun. Once the restrictions loosen, there will be even more of that. For example, when production can resume in media localization. But again, there's so much happening everywhere. Yeah, so it's really time. I think one of the pieces of advice I would give also is to always like to not resist change, to be open and flexible and adaptable. And I know lots of people have said, well, remote interpreting just isn't good enough, we can't do it. And maybe, yeah, there are things that are there are pros and cons on both sides, absolutely. But once the pandemic hit, none of that mattered. It was the only option, and then those who already knew how to deliver remote interpreting and had something set up, well, they were able to immediately provide those services, where others, had to figure this out first, either set up their own technology, get training, and so there's all this delay then. And as far as standing out and being available and ready for your clients as well, this is just, essential then. Suddenly it's really, really important. And I'm not saying, okay, well, now we had a pandemic and that accelerated everything. That's true. But I think this is good advice in general, not just for when there's a pandemic, but just to generally things don't move backwards again, like you already said. We're not going to have less technology in the future.
Oh, yeah. Let's brace for more to come, for sure.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, the last point we have there, the way it's worded, that's more speaking to LSPs and linguists, but I feel it applies to both sides of the equation. Like if we're considering the equation, the buyers and the LSPs or the service providers on one end. For the service providers, not enough mention is made around how valuable the work is that they are doing. They play a crucial role in. It's not just about global expansion. It's about enabling people access, whether that's to a paid product or a service that can change lives. But it's crucial, and that holds a lot of added value in their knowledge of the local markets, of what makes people tick, all these elements and nuances that we talked about, the culture, religion, and so on. Who should know better other than the linguists who are doing the work, or the interpreters? They are the ones on top of what is happening with the language, what is happening with the culture.
Absolutely.
But and this is another like a thought that I had. I was looking at the statement and I thought, but this also applies to the buyers, and a frequent comment that we've heard is that how difficult it is for localization departments within these buyer organizations to justify their existence.
Yes.
And so it cuts both ways, right, in this sense.
Yeah.
And they're spending a lot of effort, a lot of time, by and large, to convert people internally to their cause. And this in this way, the statement holds true as well, because they have the knowledge. They've been in the trenches. They've translated work themselves. They've been interacting, perhaps indirectly, with their users through a platform or a product being available, but they are sensitive to what buyers want, what end consumers want. And so they are uniquely positioned in making that count and making the case that, yes, our work as localization managers or localization engineers is vital to the organization, because it touches on so many aspects of product development, you name it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is wrapping it up real nicely. That it always, you mentioned the linguists, you mentioned the LSPs and the buyers, and that, well, they all play a role here. I don't know, Gabe, do you have any last words? I feel like we've covered so much ground. I almost don't know how to summarize it at this stage.
Yeah, there was a lot. Let's. I'm not one to make grand statements, but it's really about this. It's about understanding. I think it boils down to understanding the reality of your client, everyone's reality is different and everyone is very self-centered. My problems are bigger than yours, Sarah. Yeah, of course.
Definitely,
Right?
my problems are bigger than yours, Gabe. Totally.
There you go. So in business interactions is the same thing. So being mindful and of your client situation, and being able to listen, relate to it, form that human connection. Also, I think that's important. That's the way to go.
Nice. I like it. That was a very nice, grand statement. Thank you very much for talking to me today, Gabe. It's been a pleasure, as always. And
Absolutely.
for everyone listening and watching, we'll see you again next week, same time and same place. See you then. Bye.